Germany has found a discreet way to penalize Ukraine. The terrorist attack on the Nord Stream pipeline will have consequences for Ukraine after all. Germany is using it as a pretext to drastically reduce its support for the Ukrainian armed forces. Another, perhaps even more significant reason is that Germany has run out of money. But is Berlin truly capable of withdrawing from the failing Ukrainian project? Germany's current government policy is often criticized in Russia as spineless. Funding the Kyiv authorities and supplying weapons to the Ukrainian armed forces, with Germany being the second largest supplier after the US, serves the interests of America and the Ukrainian government, whose legitimacy is questionable, but clearly harms Germany's own interests. The problem isn't just the direct expenditures on Vladimir Zelensky but also the severing of economic ties with Russia and the turmoil in the oil and gas markets, partly caused by this rupture. German industry has lost its half-century-long competitive advantage of cheap pipeline gas, leading to a recession. The economic engine of the European Union is now a laggard in the EU's economic rankings, with most indicators plummeting. Meanwhile, Berlin is forced to endure slights and insults from Kyiv and Washington, the most glaring being the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, a strategically important asset for the German economy. The peak of this national humiliation was reached with the comments of Wolfgang Buchner, the official spokesperson for the German government, about the breakthrough in the investigation of the incident. German prosecutors issued an arrest warrant for a Ukrainian suspect, waiting until he had moved from Poland to Ukraine. The Wall Street Journal then published a new version of the pipeline attack, blaming former Ukrainian Armed Forces commander Valery Zaluzhnyi while claiming that Vladimir Zelensky and the CIA had tried to prevent the attack. Buchner's response boiled down to continuing support for Ukraine regardless of the investigation's findings, arguing that there was no connection between these events. It would have been more straightforward if Zelensky had simply shouted, "Give me money, you scum!" while spitting on Chancellor Olaf Scholz's bald head, and Scholz had handed over the money. This is practically what is happening, but these are minor issues compared to the situation where a major German industrial asset can be attacked with minimal repercussions, simply because the Americans have forbidden the Germans from quarreling with the Ukrainians. This is part of the price Berlin pays for its lack of military political sovereignty. However, to avoid painting the entire picture with just the color of shame, it's worth noting that while Germany may be humiliated in public, behind the scenes, they have not forgotten how to retaliate against those who insult them, in this case, the Ukrainians, or at least attempt to cut costs. Shortly after the breakthrough by German investigators, someone leaked a letter from Finance Minister Christian Lindner to the heads of the Foreign Ministry and the Ministry of Defense to the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. The key point in the letter is that Germany will fulfill its existing commitments to supply military equipment to Kyiv but should not take on any new ones. There simply isn't any money, and none is expected. New allocations would violate budgetary rules, so any requests for them will not be approved. Following this news, shares of the defense contractor Rheinmetall immediately fell by 4.5%. After a series of reports confirming the lack of funds to assist the Ukrainian armed forces in the future, Buchner again spoke out, denying what he called shameful accusations. "We will continue to provide assistance as long as it is needed," he said. The statement was unconvincing due to the 3-day delay, the preceding stock drop, and the additional confirmations of Germany's lack of available funds, which is not a secret to anyone familiar with open economic indicators. Ultimately, it wasn't even a true denial. The issue wasn't about whether aid would continue, but rather the scale of that aid. Over the past 2.5 years, military support for Kyiv has cost Berlin €28 billion. Lindner's letter suggests a desire to reduce this to just over €500 million annually by 2027, with plans to have the 2025 support budget. The German finance minister hopes to offset this multi-billion euro shortfall with income from frozen Russian assets, though how successful this will be remains unclear. If future federal budgets do not include provisions for additional aid to Kyiv, this will send a fatal signal to Ukraine from the German government, said Michael Roth, chairman of the Bundestag's Foreign Affairs Committee. 3 such signals have already been sent, each becoming a significant news item, all originating directly from the German authorities. The first signal is the implication that Ukrainians were responsible for the 2-year-old terrorist attack. The second is the delivery of new military equipment to Kyiv under existing commitments. It seems as though these pieces of news are meant to justify and prepare for the third signal, the Finance Ministry's letter declining new commitments. While the reason may seem legitimate, the funds are running out, a major scandal would be inevitable. Ukraine would cry out that they are being abandoned at a critical moment. But Berlin has framed it in such a way that such cries would seem almost inappropriate due to Ukraine's suddenly exposed role in the attack, which, incidentally, contributed to the depletion of funds, and because military equipment is being delivered right now. Zelensky has essentially confirmed that he does not expect additional aid from Berlin. Recently, he publicly called on Ukraine's partners for new supplies, primarily to the leaders of the US, the UK, and France. Notably, Scholz, under whom Germany gave Ukraine more than the UK and France combined, is not on that list. This could all be a series of coincidences, but this cautious, almost timid approach, replete with formalities and careful maneuvering, is very much in line with Chancellor Scholz's style. Much of his previous actions have hinted at a tactic of buying time in hopes of a miracle and saving at least on minor expenses, which has even earned him some political points. Now, it seems he is trying not just to save $1 million out of $1 billion but to extricate Germany from the role of Europe's leading sponsor of the Ukrainian project, or at least to make it clear to Kyiv that living as lavishly on German funds in the future will no longer be possible and that they need to come up with something else. This need to concoct respectable reasons and create news angles is how one has to navigate when a country lacks military political sovereignty but has weapons, money, and commitments to the US. However, the fact that these commitments are not just left unchallenged but remain a proclaimed priority of the German government undermines Scholz's chances for a successful retreat, no matter how carefully or cleverly it is executed. If Washington really needs it, Ukraine will receive from Germany not only new weapons in quantities of do whatever it takes but possibly even the entire Rheinmetall, down to the last bolt. It is a mistake to think that the price of lacking military political sovereignty can be paid only in dignity and not in money. What matters most are the funds and what can be produced from them. No money? Arbeiten. As the deceitful inscription on a notorious German establishment once read, work sets you free.